What if Baltimore is just like a small England?
Even something as small as candy is healthier in South Africa than it is here.
I was very intentional with stripping that from my vocabulary.
My name's Evan. This is my co-host, Cole.
What's popping off?
I feel like I could be a Disney prince.
Cole just solved global warming right now.
Juice WRLD recently released a song and he actually has passed away. I think Taylor Swift's overrated.
The #1 podcast on Mars. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Run the Culture podcast.
Good morning, y'all.
It's good to be in good company.
Great company.
We're in great company this morning with Gina
Macaulay
making another appearance and first-timer Josh Alston in the room.
If
Welcome. Thank you guys for coming on.
Thank you. Thanks
the
for having
Bay
me.
Area native, Gina Money Macaulay.
Oh,
When you
that-
said Money
that
Macaulay.
sticks.
When you said Macaulay, I was like, dang, there definitely should be a money between Gina and Macaulay.
Facts. Gina's been money for a minute too,
Oh,
so
yeah.
it's like perfect.
Oh, yeah.
And then Josh, you got the Josh A-Town Bay Area native. I don't know where the A-Town comes, but your last name's Alston, so it kind of fits.
Pretty sure A-Town is Atlanta, but
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm confused.
okay.
What's like the tag of your hometown?
the Bay has a few. So Oakland is called the town, and then
Mm.
SF is just called the city, but regionally it's just known as the Bay.
The Bay.
SF.
The Bay Area.
The
Could
Bay.
you imagine being so well known that your town is just called the town?
Yeah, that's kinda
And
cool.
people know.
Yeah.
Hey, where are you
The
from?
town.
The town.
The town.
Oakland.
Oh, where?
I've been to Oakland.
Yeah.
Nobody-
I'm from Kansas City. We don't got anything.
Really?
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
You guys got
KC.
Mahomes.
AC.
What I mean, like we got no tagline. Like, yeah, we are known as Mahomes. Oh, that's what Mahomes is from? Yeah.
Isn't that also where the Wizards of Oz is?
True. Yeah.
Yeah, so y'all got a couple things.
Yeah,
That's
we
kinda
got
cool.
we got the Wizard of Oz.
And tornadoes.
We are known for tornadoes.
But in Baltimore, there's nothing really crazy happening. Well, there's crazy stuff happening, but nothing nothing good is happening.
Yeah.
So it's like, you're from Baltimore, they're like,
No.
people are normally like, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, you don't have like a Baltimore accent where you
No,
like.
I was very intentional with stripping that from my vocabulary.
Did
why?
you
Why is that?
Oh my God, Baltimoreans get made fun of so much.
They do.
Really?
Yes, like, they don't even,
I don't
it's-
even know what that accent like what's a phrase
so like, you know how we say to?
to?
Like I'm going to the store.
Yeah, they'll be like, I'm going to the store. Like
The
all of
store.
it would be, it's not T-O-O, it's T-E-W.
To.
Oh,
To.
That sounds
You.
British to me.
Or avenue.
To.
What
Like
else would they say?
Gabby talks like that. To.
No, it's not to, it's to. And it like you, it's not you, it's you.
you.
Or
That
What else
sounds
do they
exactly
say?
the same
They
to
say-
me.
I'm not gonna lie.
they say, they don't say mother, they say mother.
Mother.
Oh, with a
Father.
V?
Father.
Yeah.
Whoa, that sounds British.
Father.
Yeah, like a little
Maybe
bit
it
of,
is
like,
derived
British
from
slang.
British, but it's not.
Yeah.
They just be on their own stuff.
They doing the
Like
whole
you go to
thing.
Baltimore, you know how like sometimes in Charlotte it's like it's a nice day. I have not witnessed a nice day in Baltimore in I don't know how
Ever.
long. It's
Yeah.
just gray 80% of the
that's kinda
days,
sad.
and the people are gray too.
Which also is
Oh.
like British, I feel like.
Yes, that is.
You know
very
what? What
British.
if-
That's very
Downcast.
much
What
like
if
London.
Baltimore is just like a small England?
It might
Yeah,
be.
they
It's like,
just
you know-
took like that energy from England
Yeah.
and brought it to.
I mean, that is where the harbor was. That's where they
Dang.
were coming in.
That's true.
You know
That's
what?
it's kind of funny that you said you get made fun, or people from Baltimore get made fun of for the accent, because sometimes if you have an accent, it's actually an advantage, because people are like, "Ooh, where are you from?" And then
Yeah.
now they want to like
Yeah.
have a conversation with you, as opposed to you feel like it's actually a disadvantage.
Have you ever felt the flip side of that with having an accent?
I haven't.
Dang.
I feel like there's no
No.
downside to a British or South African accent.
This much is true.
Mm.
Just very
I-
classic.
Well,
love
yeah.
that
I mean,
accent.
the only thing is like people think that you are British or Australian. They get that
Mm.
mixed up.
Oh,
So not
sure,
many
yeah.
people know a South African accent, so they like kind of generalize. But then that just gives you more reason to talk.
Yeah.
So
Oh.
you're like, well, actually,
I'm from here.
yeah,
That is so cool.
Have you lost any of your accent?
absolutely.
Really?
Really.
But if I had to call my mom right now,
It's all
it
back.
would like kick right in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is so like what? Why does that happen? Why if like when we get a taste? Because when I go back to Baltimore, I turn back into like a
Oh,
Baltimorean. When,
that's
when
true.
you go back to South
go
Africa,
back
it just
home.
clicks back on.
Yeah.
What prompts that?
I think it's just comfortability. Like you feel like you're in your safe environment again. and you can like express yourself the way you usually would.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes
I don't
a
know.
lot of
I think
sense.
it's your environment. Like if you go to church, some people's entire demeanor changes. But if they go to a party, their whole demeanor changes,
Yeah.
right? So like it's kind of like you adapt to your surroundings.
Josh,
Yeah.
what's it like in the Bay?
What's it like?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's kind of like no place that I've ever been to before. It's
Yeah.
like pretty diverse. Like I grew up with every race. So I had friends that were from Africa, from the Philippines, from Hong Kong, and like just all over.
That's
But
cool.
we were all in the same spot. So big like melting pot like vibes. But I totally get what Gina's saying. It's just like my Bay Area slang, I don't use it that toughly anymore. But if I were to get around some people from the Bay Area, then all of a sudden it's like, yo, fam, you even speaking English anymore? Because
Yeah.
like
Mm.
I understood 3% of that.
Yeah.
Dang.
That's funny.
But environment though.
Yeah, definitely.
When you go back and then everybody's speaking in the Bay Area slang or what language they speak where you're from in
I
South
mean,
Africa?
I speak English, but there's many. We have 11 languages.
Oh my gosh. And you know all 11?
Oh, absolutely not. I know 3.
Oh, okay. So like
you know
do
3 though. Wow.
We learned it in school. You had to learn multiple languages.
What
in
are the
school.
3 that you know?
English, Afrikaans, and Zulu.
Okay,
do
so
you speak French as
what-
well?
Afrikaans is the
It's like Dutch. It's a very harsh language. I don't know how else to say it.
yeah
It's very
yeah,
it's very rough.
yeah. And then
Zulu.
Zulu.
That's the native
That's the native.
language. Yeah.
Oh my gosh,
Okay.
that is so cool.
Wow.
In America, it's just like, hey, here's English, and then you have to take 2 years of Spanish to pass high school.
Yeah.
We're not learning.
But I feel like even learning other languages has to like shape you differently, like growing
Yes.
up, and even like in the diversity that you grew up in. I didn't like grow up in all that much diversity in KC,
Yeah.
and I like talk about how like I feel like even learning other languages has to have given you like some sort of like inherited empathy just to be able to like relate with different cultures and
Yeah.
like there's like a history attached to language too, and understanding a language you also have to like understand where that came from, and like it's like honoring a people group in a sense too. Like how has that shaped you and who you are?
Yeah, I agree. It definitely like opens up your mind to different kinds of lifestyles, because with language comes certain cultural trends and ways of living. And so in a very like English Western society, it's like something small, like it's respectful to be quiet and polite and that kind of stuff. But if you come to Africa, it's actually rude to be like talking under your breath or quietly because it's assumed it's gossip. So you now, as you're learning about the language, you're learning that actually you need to be pretty outgoing and loud when you're communicating. You learn that certain things mean different things in other languages. So like if I approach you in a certain way in one culture, it could be seen as something negative in another culture. So you learn
Yeah.
about people, and you learn about like the inheritance and where it comes from and why people are like that, like why we tend to lean towards certain things in certain cultures. So learning about the language helps you learn about a culture.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure even like with Josh, having people from all over the world, the way you engage with them might be a little different compared to like if everyone is from the same city or the same
Yeah,
culture or the same
yeah.
language.
Yeah.
Dang. So, Josh, you moved straight from the Bay to Charlotte, right? That's got to be some type of culture shock, because I moved from Baltimore to Charlotte and it was a culture shock, but you're moving from one coast to another. So what was like the biggest thing to where you were like, oh, this is different. I'm not used to this.
I think the biggest thing was just like going places and then being like a minority for like the first time.
Oh,
Because
dang.
it's funny,
Yeah.
like growing up around so many different cultures, it's just kind of like you never felt like the minority because everyone was represented.
Yeah.
And so certain places I would go, I would be like the only black one. Is like, oh, wait, this is weird because I've never been like the only black person or person of color in any place. So that was probably like the biggest thing. But even then, I mean, like, you're talking about two different cultures in America too, from like the West Coast to even coming to the South. And so like even getting adapted to that of just like in the West Coast, like we don't wave to strangers or say hi to strangers on the street. But in the South, it's considered rude if you're not like waving by somebody, even if you don't know them. So that was kind of weird for me when I first came. I was like, do we know each other? Why are you saying hi to me on the street? We're just strangers. But yeah, people are definitely a little more friendly when it comes to that kind of stuff. So just little things like that were probably like the biggest differences from like coming west to east.
Yeah.
It's so funny you said that about race because I experienced the opposite. So in South Africa, I'm in a minority. So when I came to America, I'm like, there are so many white people. And it was so weird. I'd never worked with so many white people. I'd never gone to church with so many white people.
Really?
Like it was a weird adjustment. It was a huge adjustment because how I engage with white people in South Africa is very different to in America because the culture is just very different. So that was very interesting that you were a minority and I became a majority, and that was very weird.
Yeah. What do you miss most about home?
Oh, so many things. Definitely the culture, because just the culture that we have is very vibrant and we express ourselves differently. So your interactions with people are very different. Definitely the food. We were talking a little bit earlier about like how there's sugar and everything here. Yeah, the food here is very interesting. It could not hurt to add some more flavor and spices.
Oh yeah,
To
is
American
food
food?
super spicy and
American
well-
food tastes bland.
Oh, yeah.
really?
Yeah. And also just the food is a lot more natural in South Africa.
True.
So even something as small as candy is healthier in South Africa than it is here because the products we're using are different.
Yeah.
Have you ever tried like Mexican Coke?
No.
Coca-Cola?
Yes. Yeah. I have.
Not the drug.
So
the
much
drink.
better. It's
No.
so much better.
It's so much better because people use cane sugar for that. So
Yeah.
different countries use different ingredients.
Yeah.
So it tastes different. So like we came to America and tried like a Coca-Cola, you'd expect it to be the same. And we're
You're
like,
like
wait, this
disappointed.
tastes so different.
That's-
Was it
Yeah.
better or worse?
Worse.
Yeah.
So.
Oh my gosh, this is crazy.
But you might think the same if you go to South Africa because you're used to
Yeah.
your kind of food. You might be like, yeah, this is too much, or it doesn't taste sweet enough, or
Yeah.
whatever it is.
I've heard about how like organic everything is in other countries, and I've even heard like I can't eat gluten. I
Yeah.
have a gluten intolerance, but I've heard that because the way that farming is done and stuff, like there aren't the genetic modifications and the pesticides and stuff, and people that have gluten and allergies are sometimes able to eat
Yeah.
bread and things like that from other areas because of how like
Natural.
natural it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's something that low-key I've been curious about because we've been eating bread, we've been eating all types of products that would contain gluten for many years. So where did these gluten intolerance, these lactose intolerances, like all of these things to where our body
Yeah.
is rejecting what we eat comes about?
We're changing the way we make things
Correct.
and like how we harvest and the process of refining the wheat and like all of that. We're changing that to make it more
Yeah.
speedy and faster, and like so we kind of compromise quality because we want to like get more products out of something.
Yeah.
And one of the culture shocks was like we had been in youth ministry in South Africa, but coming to America, we had never met so many teenagers that are on medication or have allergies, like peanut butter. Like you can't take peanut butter to school because someone might die. I'm like, what the heck? That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So we don't have a lot of
That
allergies.
just wasn't a thing.
Yeah, because I guess just the food is just different and
Dang.
your body adjusts better.
Yeah.
What in the world? You know, America is low-key spoiled. I'm gonna say.
Low key, high key.
Yeah, low-key, high-key, actually.
Yeah.
Dang.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it's so important to get around people that have different experiences.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like I feel like I kind of grew up in, one area that had one kind of culture to it, and I feel like for you it must have been really cool being around so many different cultures and having access to their ways of life. I'm sure like the food in the Bay is so much more diverse as well, and the activities and things like that. And I feel like that probably had to have shaped you in a way of just giving you more context for what life is like maybe in different cultures and around the world, and just giving you like a little like window into what that's like. Is that like what your experience was like, or how did that shape you?
For sure, it was definitely different. I think there's two sides to it. I think there's the side where you are exposed to so many cultures, but then you also can experience the side where it's just like, since there is every culture represented, sometimes people get comfortable and then they just stay within, like, you know, you might see all the Africans grouped together or all the Asians grouped together.
Yeah.
And so even though you're in this melting pot, somehow you can find yourself in situations where we choose to segregate ourselves of like free will.
Yeah.
So it's funny because like, even though you have access to it, you might not necessarily expose yourself to it.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of like the weird dichotomy. So you can get around it, but sometimes you're not always like, I don't think we naturally gravitate towards that because like we want to be around what's comfortable.
Yeah.
You know, and so sometimes it feels more comfortable to hang out with people your own race.
Yeah.
But if you're able to break out of that shell, I think that's where like you find out that we're actually more similar than we are like different. I think that's the biggest thing about like, especially on social media, we see it now so many times about like people just being like, did we all have the same childhood? And it's kind of like, we kind of did.
Yeah.
Like there's certain things that like across races that we all like experienced growing up. And so I think that's the super cool thing about like social media is like shedding light to certain things. Like, oh yeah, we're more similar than we actually think.
Yeah.
You know what? That is a positive of social media. I think that's one of the first times we've talked about social media in a positive light on this podcast.
Yeah.
But I think that is cool because when I grew up, even though the neighborhood I grew up in was predominantly black, the like city I grew up in was predominantly black, the schools I went to, they were all like Catholic. I was the only black kid in the class. It was like always so weird. So when I moved to Charlotte, it wasn't really that much of a culture shock. It was more or less just like a shift of maybe my prejudice. Because in Baltimore, it was weird. Like I got in third grade, I was called a black bastard. I don't know if I can say that. Can I say that?
Well, that's what you're called.
I was called that. And I was like, I went home and I was like, Mom, this girl called me this today. I wasn't even upset. I just didn't understand.
Wow.
So then when I moved to Charlotte, I just assumed like everyone's going to be like they were in Baltimore. There's so many white people. They all hate me because I'm black. And then I started like, I mean, now I work on a staff that's about 60, 70% white.
Yeah.
And I don't feel any hate from y'all.
Yeah.
I think it's like, I think being in those settings made it normal for me to be around white people, but it didn't allow my feelings to be able to realize that not all white people are going to treat me the way that some will.
You think it's important to move out of your hometown? Like there is something about that of like, at some point I feel like you do have to like push yourself to experience something different.
Well, how will you know there's like better?
Yeah, I think it's important to at least travel.
Yeah.
That's like the starting place. I mean, if you're not traveling, you're not really inquisitive about other people and cultures, and you're not putting yourself in a place that is uncomfortable. You're challenged. Like, how do I get around the subway in New York? Well, got to figure it out. Like, you need to try those things.
Yeah.
And the longer you stay in one space and in one bubble, I do think your mindset becomes limited because you're just going with what's comfortable. So I do think it's important to at least travel. If you're not like moving your entire life, but at least try different cities.
Yeah.
We have met people in America that haven't even like traveled in America. And you're like, you've got New York like 5 hours away, or you've got Florida 7 hours. Just like take a drive and explore and try something. But I think that's one of the culture shocks that like I experienced coming here, is that people have so much that they're comfortable just chilling at home and not exploring or not engaging with people that are different because they're not, they don't need to. They've got everything at their fingertips, and there's no need to try something else or to do something different.
Yeah. How do you, when you go into a new environment or you move to a new place, how do you stay true to yourself? I feel like there's this like one aspect of like wanting to reinvent yourself. I felt that a little bit when I moved to Charlotte from Kansas City, of like, I want to like, you know, kind of reinvent. There's an opportunity. These people have no context for who I am or what I can do. And so there's like a freedom in that. But I think there's also this aspect of like, I also got to stay true to myself and not try to put on a
facade.
And try to be something that I'm not, to try to like impress people. Or I don't know, like what was that like for y'all moving to Charlotte, or, you know, moving to a new place? And yeah.
I think
hard.
for sure.
Very hard.
Like, I think for me, coming from the Bay Area, I feel like I always wanted to stay true to me. And just like we were talking about earlier about like environment, like there's certain pressures that come with like moving to a new environment, whether from your job or just like the things that you're surrounded by. And so for me, I think I always was like, how do I keep who I am in a new environment? Because sometimes you can get around that pressure, and if you don't know how to handle it, like the environment will just make you into what everyone else is in that environment. And so I don't know if it's my forewing or whatever, but just trying to be different and always trying to remain like individual. I was like, I don't know how to stay. I want to stay true to myself. And so I think in certain seasons that I might have overcompensated trying to stay true to who I am, and taking like little qualities about myself and then like heightening them so that way I wouldn't forget who I was. And maybe that was to a detriment, because what you're doing, like I think Pastor said it like a few sermons ago, like one thing that served its purpose because you're not trying to forget who you are is now actually working to a detriment now, you know? And so I kind of found myself in that space. I was like, oh, well, how do you balance those things of you don't want to lose who you are, but you also don't want to miss out on what God is doing like right now by remaining in the same place you were when you were wherever you came from.
Yeah.
So it's a weird thing to try to balance, but I don't know. That's probably not helpful, but
no,
that's what
I think it's true. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think it's very hard. Because everyone has the need to want to be accepted in a new group. And so you're willing to tweak things about yourself to fit in, or to even hold back things about yourself to fit in. For me, it was really hard because how I express myself here is so different to how I express myself back home.
Really?
Like you may think I'm a whole other person back home because I just express myself very differently. And I learned that it's probably not going to work very well here, right? But I think that it comes down to like who you are at your core. It's like your core values and what makes you who you are, your beliefs, who you want to become, the things that you stand for should not change, really. Like those core things should not change. Your personality can change from time to time. It's like those, like if I'm someone who is very outgoing, but then I come into a country that I'm very uncomfortable in, my belief may not have changed about myself, but how I express myself has.
Wow.
So I think it's figuring out what things about me, like if my accent changes, that's not going to change who I am as a person. But if what I start to believe changes, that kind of does change who I am internally.
Yeah.
And there's pros and cons, because the more you expose yourself to something, the more you are going to change what you believe at a deeper level.
Yeah.
But I think it's that core of who you are is like sticking to that. And I think it's important to tap into those things. Like I went through a season where I was extremely homesick, and I just started listening to music that I would have listened to back in South Africa, because it just made me like think back and like remember my family and remember my hometown and my friends and that kind of stuff. And so occasionally it's like reminding yourself, tapping back into those things that made you who you are, because I think we can all say where we come from has shaped who we are.
Yeah.
Like we like certain things, or we believe certain things, or we do certain things because of how we were raised or where we came from. And I just think that it's important to stay connected to that at some point.
Yeah, definitely.
No, I do the same exact thing. When I'm feeling homesick, I'll subconsciously put on like old gospel. And it'll be like songs that like it'll be so weird. I'll wake up with just a random hymnal on my heart, and I'll play it not even realizing that like I get taken back to when I was like 6. And I would be like sitting in my home church and the choir would be singing it. and it's like very nostalgic, very like, I don't know. It just takes me back to like,
Yeah.
even though I didn't like living in Baltimore, it wasn't the greatest always. Those moments when I was in those church, knowing that like those were definitely blocks of the puzzle for me to be sitting in this chair now.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Dang.
this hymnal,
Yeah.
it's dope to listen to.
I feel like there is something so important about like what you were saying of like going back into your own history.
Yeah.
Like it's so easy to forget. Like
Mhm.
I feel like I've seen all these memes of like, oh, that unlocked a memory within me that I didn't even like remember I had. I feel like I've been having a lot of those moments, and I feel like it's so easy to forget where you came from and
Yeah.
to forget like the little qualities of your upbringing or the environment that you grew up in. I even went back through, this was like a year ago or so, went back through like some of my old notebooks from youth group,
Oh,
like the
wow.
little notes that I wrote down and stuff. And even like the way that I would talk about God and like really trying to figure out my relationship with God, and was, you know, really starting to read the Bible for myself for the first time, and just like how intrigued and inspired I was by like every little thing. I was like,
Yeah.
man, there's something so inspiring about that Evan that I
Yeah.
almost feel like I've lost over time in the knowledge, the curse of knowledge that I have now of oh, this is just normal, or that's just yeah, I've read, you know, 1 Timothy 4, I've read this or that, and there was something about that like reopened my eyes to like seeing it fresh again. And I like those moments are just like so I'm like, man, I need to like journal more. I need to like what I'm in, the season I'm in right now, I feel like I'm really gonna cherish years from now.
Yeah.
Or like I don't want to miss the significance of what is happening in my life right now. And you know, I'm about to get married and like this whole engagement season, and I'm like, I need to slow down and like really try to hold on to the excitement that I have right now, and the feelings, and the like the hope of what could be. And I feel like it's that same way with like your upbringing too, of thinking back, and even like I get to see my grandparents like every once in a while, like every couple years or so. And I love like asking them about their childhood too, and like what was it that shaped you into who you are, that then shaped my parents, that then has shaped me. And like it's kind of a weird thing to like think about, but like I'm really am standing on the shoulders of the decisions that my grandparents made, and the like this is random, I don't even know if we'll use this, but like my granddad was stationed in Japan for a couple years during, I think it was right after World War II. I think it was Cold War. It was like the 60s maybe, or 50s. And just like him talking about like being 20 years old in like they just flew him to a whole different country, and like going into the city, and like him like being exposed for the first time to a completely different world of way of existing, and just like what that was like for him. And I was like, I could not imagine just picking up everything and just like that would have been super scary. And he was like, yeah, I mean, honestly, I didn't really think about it. It was just like, it's just what we were doing.
Wow.
And I'm like, this the like those qualities of boldness and courage to just like just take whatever comes and just like figure it out. And I'm like, man, there's something so inspiring about that I'm like, I need to like I want to you know, vicariously take those qualities too. But I do think it's so important to like retune in with yourself, and like who is this like old Evan that like I've forgotten about, or like what are some of the things that like the way that he would read the Bible that maybe I've lost now that I think can be unlocked. But there is something about that like home environment that's like, when I go back home, there are those things that are just like unlocked in me that I'm like, oh man, I feel like I'm tuned back into something that I had no effort to like tune back into, but like I'm back in that mindset and that place again. And some of those are maybe unhealthy, but of just like, oh, mom's cooking and she's going to handle everything. And I don't gotta worry about anything anymore. I really do go back to like a little kid whenever I go back home. Is the weirdest thing, but
I agree.
yeah.
I think it's like it's also so important to do that with our faith. I'm so glad you spoke about reading your like youth journals, because I think we can get to a place that is almost stagnant with God, that we forget what it was like when we were like completely in awe of him for the first time. And I think the same way we do that with our culture and with our home, we need to be doing that with our relationship with God, because it just reignites something and it helps you like get back to that place with him where it was just like so genuine and pure. And it wasn't about just these like surface level things. It was just so deep and like real.
Yeah. I wasn't like, how am I going to apply this, or like really like analyzing, is this true or is this significant from out? It was like, oh, this is amazing. This is, and just that I guess it is that like childlike faith in a sense of there's something about the naivety and maybe even the ignorance that has like some real power in it, of like just that maybe the teachability of it, that I don't know, there's like there's definitely some power in that, of definitely. Like maybe there is something about suspending like challenging myself to suspend that disbelief even now, to be like, okay, I'm gonna take this with fresh eyes again. I was in sitting in church the other day, and I guess this was like a new family that came, like new people that hadn't been to, and just like seeing how they watched Pastor speak and how they watched the worship happen. And they talked to me after, and they're like, they're like, is this every week? And I'm like, it was like I almost felt bad, because I was like, yeah, it is every week. And I'm like, dang, have I completely lost that sense of awe of like, like you guys have elevation worship every week and Pastor Steven speaks. Like, are the sermons always this good, or was this one extra good? And I'm like, man, like,
he wasn't even going crazy today.
Like, and there's nothing yet. But there's something about like almost borrowing someone else's faith or borrowing someone else's perspective.
Absolutely.
100. Because you like you get jaded after a while, like with anything.
Yeah.
Like the longer that you're in it, the more it becomes normal and the more jaded you are. And so like even getting around other people, like where it's just like, oh, this is your first time experiencing it. And then sometimes it'll just unlock that thing in you where it's like, oh, I remember when it was like 3 years ago and I was like, oh yeah, dude, I would do anything just to be in the room.
Yeah.
And now you're in the room every week. And it's just like, oh, this is normal.
Yeah.
But it took a VIP coming in who's never seen Pastor live to be like, oh, dude, this is incredible. Yeah. He's like, oh, wow. No, you're right. This is incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even with our youth ministry, like, did you ever dream of being part of a youth that was like this at Elevation Youth? No way.
My
It's
first
crazy.
interaction ever with a youth ministry was in the basement, like back half of a church. And it was on Halloween. And nobody could dress up in costumes. And the average age there was 43.
At a youth event?
At a youth
group.
event. And
it's all leaders. You know, it's a bad time when it's all leaders. And
they gave us pre-packaged bags of candies because they didn't want us trick-or-treating.
Oh, wow.
And that was my first ever experience of any type of youth event.
I'm surprised you stuck around.
Yeah.
My grandma was my drive. I was like 8. But now looking back to where I was when I was 8 at that youth group, and then seeing Elevation, it's honestly like, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Like when you were talking about looking back at your old journals, I just kept thinking about how like we strive so much for new revelations when sometimes the thing we need to hear is in an old one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So it's like I could be waiting for God to speak to me day and night. God, please speak to me. Please speak to me. When he's spoken and I'm just looking through the words that he said in the past as if they're nothing, because I think they're not applicable anymore, as if God's word has an expiration date.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
So I think that's profound.
Yeah.
That's
It really
crazy.
is.
Well, this has been a great conversation. We're 40 minutes in. And thank you guys for coming on.
Of course. This is great.
This is great.
Us, yo.
Josh the Bay Alston and Gina Money Macaulay.
G-Money Macaulay.
Oh my God. I honestly miss getting in this room.
It
For you
feels
guys,
good,
if y'all are like, oh, the podcast coming on every week, we had like a little gap between YTH Prep podcast. We filmed like 4 in 1 week.
Yeah.
Evan and I were
Yeah.
like getting no sleep.
None.
If you see us in the podcast and you're like, why do Evan and Cole look so weird? It's because we had no sleep.
None.
But hey, this is episode 20.
This is
Wow.
20.
Yeah. You
Big
know,
2-0.
me in the podcast, no more teenagers.
Wow. Yeah, you're about to turn 20.
I'm about to
and
turn 20
You turned 20
podcast.
this weekend, and we recorded the 20th podcast.
I know. It's
Ooh.
Kind of cool.
It's biblical. Oh my gosh. you
Divine
made my-
alignment.
My wrist.
Should we go out with singing Cole happy birthday?
Yes.
Wow.
Hey.
Happy birthday to you.
All the baritones.
Happy birthday to you.
Oli,
as
oli,
well.
oli,
Oli,
Hey.
oli, oli.
Happy
birthday,
Run
dear.
the Culture and
Run the Culture
Cole.
podcast is turning 20
20-year-old.
episodes.
Shout out being 19 though.
Happy birthday to you.
All right, we love
We'll
y'all.
see
Catch
ya.
y'all next
Peace.
week.